There's no app that I use more in n8n than Google Sheets, and in this video we're going to be talking about literally how you can automate your Google Sheets. Like literally, it's just going to take care of itself. It's going to completely run itself. I know that sounds freaking crazy, but hear me out here. Let me show you some examples. I run a photo, video, and DJ company. We do about 500 to 700 events every single year. Now, my staff is locked out of this spreadsheet because it updates itself, it creates new rows. Everything that needs to happen is just taken care of automatically using Google Sheets and n8n. Take, for example, our recruitment process. We get thousands of people inquiring for positions that we have. And this is completely automated from entering in people's names and the job they're inquiring for. And even if they get rejected, this is going to be automated for the most part. There is some manual intervention because I do believe in manual intervention. Like, hey, once they submit questions, we need to screen and make sure, hey, I actually want to interview this person or send them a test. For example, test like if you're an editor, edit 20 pictures for me. I want to see how good you are. Or if you're a writer, write a blog post for me. That kind of stuff. And then we can schedule interviews. But all of this can be automated with the exception of whatever it is that you don't want automated, which in this case is checking boxes. Makes your life super easy. The next thing here is sales analytics. So we do like data dumps with all of our analytics that we can put this data into a data looker studio that gives us real-time information on how we're doing at any given moment in time. And so this is what we've used for our company to great effect, all thanks to Google Sheets and the automated process of entering in data. The next thing is taking things like revisions, like photography revisions, for example. People will put their requests in here, and then that's automatically sent into our Google spreadsheet here. And we have everything that we need at our fingertips so that we can get to work and do whatever needs to be done. Again, this sheet just automates itself. Our editors only have access to literally these check boxes here, because the thing is that I found that a lot of the times there's just a lot of human error. I wanted to remove that, automate this whole process, and now it works seamlessly. The only thing they can do is check boxes, and it just really is a really nice process to have set up. So we're going to be walking through 11 pieces of functionality that you need to know in Google Sheets. If you know these things, I honestly think that you're gonna say, like, I'm trying to be conservative with my numbers here, but I think that on a monthly basis, you could save a couple hours. I know with this kind of stuff, like this probably saves our team at a minimum, like 40 hours. But it's not even just the time savings. That's one thing, right? The time savings, the money savings. The other thing is just the mistakes that we're avoiding. Things that would have otherwise been swept under the rug or no longer swept under the rug. Everything's tracked, everything's categorized, there's no mistakes happening, and that is priceless. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how you can set something up like this so that it's a one-time investment that is going to run itself for the next however many years you want it to run. So if that's something that you're interested, then stay tuned. All the blueprints for this are going to be down below for free in the description. You can go ahead and download them. Let's get into this right now. All right, so let's get started. I'm just inside my n8n account. If you guys haven't done so already, you can head over to n8n.io and get started with a 14-day free trial. Once you've gone ahead and done so, you can go ahead and create an account, and this is what you're going to see. The first thing I want to talk about is adding a trigger. A trigger is essentially saying, hey, what starts this workflow? And if we click on the massive unavoidable plus button that is in the center of the screen, we can type in here Google Sheets, right? And we're gonna have 3 options available for triggers. We have on row add, on row update, or on row added or updated, right? And so essentially, if we circle back to our Google Sheet here, it's just like, hey, if we, for example, write in test here, this is an on row add, and then we could essentially update a field here or be like, hey, I'm gonna change this, and that's an on row change, right? So on row add, on row change, and they have these triggers here for that functionality. So anytime you do anything in Google Sheets, this is going to start a workflow, and then you can connect this into thousands of other applications, whatever it is that you want to do. Here's just a list of the applications that you can effectively connect into on the side here, right? And I can just scroll for days and days and days. But anyways, let's go ahead and start this off by hitting Google Sheets again, and we're gonna keep this as simple as possible by choosing on row added. And effectively, what we have to do is just create a credentials here. So this is just essentially giving n8n access to your Google Sheets so that anytime something happens here, we can update n8n. And so we're gonna go ahead, create credentials, and just log in with Google. And then once you've gone ahead and done that, then we can start working on this. Now, effectively, the first thing is that we just need to locate this sheet, right? And we can do that by going to the document section here and selecting n8n Google Sheets. You can just type in the one that you created here. And for the purposes of this tutorial, and I'll include this in the blueprints as well for you guys to download for free, but I'm just adding in things like first name, last name, email, all the message, and then budget, rejected, type of leads, cost of goods sold, and profit. Just like, you know, thinking about like leads coming in, just as an example here. And so effectively, we've selected the sheet, and then we can select the list down here. And this list is more or less just the tab. I don't know why they call it the list, because I think tab's much more appropriate, but it's just down here, right? Sheet 1, sheet 2, if you add as many, you can add as many of these as you want and update whatever sheet it is that you want. So we can go ahead and click this fetch test results here, and we're gonna wait for new data to load in. So if I come in here and I type in Jono, for example, it's going to fire back with data, and we can see that data over here. Now, unfortunately, this freaking sucks. And if you didn't catch that, I'm gonna say it again. This sucks. The way n8n built this out was honestly, in my opinion, it's freaking horrible. Like it's really, really bad how they did it. So I'm gonna show you, first of all, why it's bad. And then I'm gonna show you a better solution. But I think it's important for you to understand at least why it's bad so you can avoid doing this at all costs. And then there's gonna be a really simple solution that we'll get into. The reason it's bad is because when you load in rows, you're loading in the whole spreadsheet. But I don't wanna load in the whole spreadsheet. I only wanna load in the row that we changed. Like, you know, let's say we have a spreadsheet here and there's 700 or 1,000 rows and I update something like in the middle of the spreadsheet or whatever. How do I know which row I updated, which is a massive pain in the butt? And so the problem with this is that it just loads in every single row. So this is not good. And since there's just a way better way of doing this, what I'm gonna do is not waste any time showing you something I'd never use myself. We're gonna back out of this. I'm going to delete this Google Sheets row add trigger or row update trigger. And I'm gonna show you the backdoor way of doing the same thing, just way faster and way better. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add a step, and this is going to be a webhook, okay? And with this webhook, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a custom script to send data here. When I say custom script, I really don't want you to freak out because literally this is so easy. All you have to do is hit copy and paste. And as long as you do that, you're gonna be good. There's no coding whatsoever involved. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna head over to our Google Sheet here. And in the extensions tab up top here, there's something called app script, okay? And we're gonna create an app script. And what this does is that anytime anything gets added, updated, or any change, anything, doesn't matter what you do, whatever it is, it's going to automatically send data into our n8n environment here, and we can use that. And so effectively, back in this app script here, we're going to delete all of this. We're gonna copy in, and this is gonna be in the blueprint section down below. I'm just gonna literally copy in everything here. This is just my script. We don't have to change anything. We're just copying it in, and we're pasting it, okay? The only thing we need to change is this webhook URL here. So we're gonna delete this, okay? And we're going to paste our webhook here, right in between these brackets. And so if we come back, what we're posting is this. So I'm gonna literally just copy by clicking here. You can see I've copied it like a million times for you guys, just on the side here, and we're going to come back and paste it in here. And that looks good to me. We can go ahead and save this script up top here. And that's part one done. Part two is we're going to come over to the trigger section here, click on there, and we're going to add a trigger. What a trigger is saying is, how do we want to notify n8n when there's a change? Do we want to change, do we want to notify it on like an hourly basis? Do we want to notify it every time there's somebody actually came in here and edited a field? Like how are we editing or sending data? And the answer is anytime we change anything, we want to send data back to n8n. So we're just writing the trigger that's going to execute that code that we put in here. So we can circle down to the bottom left, right here. And I think my face is just blocking this, but they have this massive unavoidable add trigger button here. You literally cannot miss it on this page. And this all is pretty much good to go. This is good, this is good, this is good. The only thing we're changing is this event type here, and we're gonna select on edit. And then we can click save. And if you're like me at the time of this recording, it's gonna draw an error for you. It's gonna take about like 10 seconds to load. And then it's gonna say, hey, this isn't working or whatever. And I think this could be like because I have ad blocker on or something like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and say, screw it, I'm gonna save it again, and it's gonna work the second time. I'm gonna log into my account and we can essentially approve it here. Now what Google is saying is like, hey, this isn't like a verified app developer that's created this. And that's right, because it's me. I just created this script myself. Anytime you create a script, as far as I've ever created one, it's always giving me this error. Essentially, what we're gonna do is we're gonna click advanced here, and we're going to proceed forward, and we're going to allow, okay? And then when we allow it, we can circle back into Google Sheets. And now anytime we run this, I'm gonna listen for a test event here. And from here, we're just gonna add in whatever data, and this should fire off. And if it doesn't, it's because we just need to change one setting here. So I'm gonna stop listening. We need to change the HTTP method here to post, right? Essentially, this is just saying this is a fancy way in coding to say this is the backbone of the internet, where you send requests back and forth, right? You send a request from Google Sheets to n8n, and this happens every single day. But there's multiple different requests. A GET request is we're getting information, we're retrieving information back, and a POST request is we are sending data somewhere. And in this case, it's a POST request because we're sending data from Google Sheets. We're sending, right, the changes that we created on this tab, right? We're sending this over to n8n. So we'll change this to POST, we'll listen for events, and we'll come back here and I'll enter in more data, and now it should pull in the results over here. Perfect. We have tons of different stuff here. Specifically, the most important things are we know the range values, like the row start and the column start, and we also know the row values here. So it's going to pull in all of these different rows so that effectively any single time anything changes, let's say it's on row 5, we have all the values from row 5, right? And so that's really cool. If I was to update like 5Z down here, it would pull in all of the rows from Z all the way to A, right? Cool, so that's more or less effectively how we can do these triggers in n8n. And so the next thing that I want to talk about is kind of like on the same vein here, and it's essentially how you can create dashboards just like this, right? So how you can create a dashboard like this, an interactive dashboard in a matter of a couple minutes using Google Sheets where, hey, you create this check mark and maybe you want to send off an email to somebody. Maybe you want to ask them to submit a test, right? If you're an editor, submit me 20 photos edited. If you're a blog writer, submit me a blog post. And then maybe the next step is you check a box and then you schedule an interview with somebody, so on and so forth. This is really simple. How we do this is we're gonna go back into our Google Sheet here, okay? And effectively what we're gonna do is we're just gonna say like, I'm just gonna make this up, so just to show you guys what it looks like, but I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna have an approved column here, and I'm gonna insert in here, and this, you can do it however you want, but I'm gonna insert these check boxes in, okay? And more or less what I wanna do is I'm gonna have like a fabricated lead here, and we're just gonna say, hey, I'm interested in your services. The budget's gonna be $1,000, and the rejected is gonna be false. Type of lead is just gonna be like AI automation. Cost of goods sold is maybe like $300 and profit is $700, right? And so effectively we can make these really complicated dashboards very easily. Like this is like your own custom web app. And so how we do this is we effectively just check off the box here, right? So let's go ahead and do that with what we've built out here. So I'm waiting for the trigger event, and we're essentially just gonna click approved here, and then we're gonna come back and we should get the data in here. And we have all of the information that I put in here, right? Which is awesome. This is fantastic. But the only problem is maybe I only want this to fire when I check off this box, but I don't want it to fire if I update the profit, cost of goods sold, type of lead, reject, all this stuff. I only want it to fire if it's this checkbox here. And so how we can change it so that we only fire it off here is we're going to add this plus button here, and we're going to type in filter, okay? And we're going to make sure that a couple conditions are true. The first condition is I only want this to fire off if it is approved, okay? Like this column is changing. So J is the column that's changing and the value is true. So for example, if I uncheck this, I don't want it to work. I only want to send this off if it's checked, not unchecked. And I want to make sure that column J is, or the checkbox is being clicked. I don't want to update this if I go like this, right? Obviously. So how we're going to do that is we're going to structure this condition to say one of two things. So let's talk about the first condition here, which is that effectively this checkbox has to be equal to true, right? And so if we circle back into n8n, we can see on the sidebar here that there's actually two true values, true value number 1 and then true value number 2. Now we need to decide which one we're going to use. And the right answer is this true value here. And the difference between these two is that if we head over to the Google Sheet, the true value that we're selecting up top here is essentially saying that whatever the cell is that we're changing is going to be here. So this cell could be this true value here. If I just type in gibberish, the value will be this here. Or if I type in like test 1, 2, 3, for example, then the value that we'd see in that field would be here, right? So effectively, all this particular value is exactly what we are changing in the particular cell that's actually triggering this workflow. Now, this down here is just saying like in column J or whatever, it's going to be true, right? So if we circle back here, effectively, if we change anything in this row, anything at all, it would pass that condition because this could be true, right? So we just need to make sure that whatever the changes that we're making to trigger this workflow has to equal true, right? And so for that reason, we're going to make sure that this value here is going to be true. So let's drag this in, okay? And we're going to make sure that the data types are the same. We can see this is a text field here, and this is also a text field. And so that's good, but it could in some instances be different data types. So we just need to make sure that's correct. And then we're going to make sure that this mirrors the actual value, which is true. That is the first condition completed. Now we're going to add one more condition here. And what that condition is essentially saying that whatever the column is, it has to be equal to J. So if we circle back to n8n and we look at the column start, we can see that it's column 10. We just need to make sure that we put in here the column that J is. So I'm going to put in the column start here. And if we circle back, we can actually just count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we know that J is the 10th. Well, I probably should have known that, but we can just put in 10 here because that's the letter or the column of J. And then we're good to go. What this is essentially saying is that this will only pass if two things are met. Firstly, that the cell needs to be equal to true that we're changing, and that cell that we're changing has to be column J. So moving backwards here, we can go ahead and test this out, and we can see that we ran into a particular problem, and that's because the data type here is text, but the data type here is a number. So let's go ahead and let's change this to a number and is equal to 10 and give this another shot. And now we can see that it is kept here. And what kept means is that it has officially passed the two conditions. And so for this reason, it would pass the filter step and continue on with the automation. But for instance, if I went back and let's just say I test another field here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just update some random field here and then test this again, it should say that it was not kept, right? And so now we can see that it's discarded here, meaning that it did not pass these two conditions. So now we have a dashboard that's super interactive where anytime you check off a box, it's going to do whatever it is that you want. So you could come back into n8n and you could be like, hey, I'm gonna add this person into my CRM. You could send off like a Gmail to the person being like, hey, you've been approved for an interview request. Here's a booking link to book a calendar event. Whatever the case is that you want to do, then the world's your oyster. You can connect in thousands of applications through here. One last thing I want to mention on this, just before we move past triggers, is that if we look at the, if I just click the plus button here and I go back to, and I think my face might be blocking this, I'm not too sure, but if I go back to Google Sheets and I just add this in here, and I do on row added or updated, you can see that the mode here is every minute. This is very problematic because we're having to send a pull request. So let me explain what a pull request is, because I think it's just better if I draw this out. What a pull request is. What a pull request is it's saying, hey, this is n8n over here, and n8n is searching for Gmail, okay? It's gonna go to your email and it's gonna say, hey, has there been, or sorry, this is Google Sheets, actually. This is supposed to be Google Sheets. So you can see like all the tabular data here. And it's going to send a request back every certain amount of time. It's gonna say, hey, is there a result here, right? Has there been an update? Has there been something that's added? And if something has been added or updated, then it's going to send this data back, okay? And then you're gonna have this data and it's gonna start the workflow. But if there's nothing here, then it's still gonna, it's not gonna return anything, but you're still having to fire this workflow. And the problem with this is that when you're dealing with polling, you send a request per a time interval. So for example, 1 every minute, or 1 every hour, or 1 every day. But the problem is you're paying for this every single time. So if you look at the conventional plan, you have 2,500 operations on the lowest plan. But if you're doing this every minute, then it's going to cost you 1,440 operations every single day, which is not economical. So this is why that webhook that we set up is definitely the better option here, because this is only going to be paying for your usage. So in other words, you can think about this as like, hey, now you're not checking to see if something's available. You're just waiting for something to change, and then it's going to send that into n8n instantly. You're not waiting like a minute or an hour or a day. It's instant, first of all, and you're only paying for your usage. So this is a lot cheaper rather than over here. It's a lot more expensive, and you're not even getting results potentially. You're just paying for the privilege of seeing if there's data over here. So this is not good, and this is really good. The other alternative is you could get n8n self-hosted, and this is the best way to do this because you're going to be saving a ton of money, but this is a more advanced feature that I'm not going to be going into in this Google Sheets specific course here. So let's circle back over here and we're going to move on. Specifically, what I want to talk about is how you can add or update rows. So now that we've gone through this, the next thing that I want to talk about is adding a row. So we're going to hit this massive plus button here. Or I guess it's not so massive, it's actually kind of small. We're going to type in Google Sheets and we're going to enter in Google Sheets. We got a lot of different actions here. Now, an action is different than the trigger because the action is what happens after the workflow starts. And so we can do lots of different things, but the most common things here are appending or updating a row. Appending is just essentially saying adding a row, or updating is updating an existing row, or you can only append, you can clear a sheet, you can create a sheet, delete a sheet, and so on and so forth. And really the main three ones that I look for here are creating or updating, and getting rows. You need to sometimes search for things. So let's keep this very simple for this one, and we're going to do append a row in a spreadsheet. And very similarly, we're going to connect in the same account, and we're going to choose the same workflow that we had before. So I'm going to type in n8n Google Sheets because that's the name up top here. And so we can choose the right sheet, which is going to be 1, and we can add in whatever data it is that we want here, right? And so traditionally, you'd have like data from past modules that you'd add in here. I'm just going to go ahead and test this just so you can kind of see what it looks like if I test this workflow and I click approve here and we circle back, and this is going to fire off, and then it's going to pass the filter. It's going to update the sheet, but it's going to fail because there's nothing that we're actually updating it with. But traditionally, you'd have all this data to map in, right? And this might be from like your CRM. You can think about like your event schedule here. You send data from your CRM, like the date, in my case, the date of the event, the name of the client, the contract that we're putting on, the start time of the event, the end time. And because we're keeping this super simple, we just have a Google Sheet. So it's kind of feeding in the same data that we just added to the Google Sheet. So in this particular example, it's not useful, but you can kind of see how you get data from other sources and then add it in here. So we could just, for example, put in like add a first name, and I'm just going to literally drag a value over, or you could hard code it in here as well. The distinction between expression and fixed is that fixed is like literally just text. Expression is when you're adding in like variables that can change every single time. So this person's name is not always going to be Jono. The next person that enters might be Bob, Sandy, Cassandra, Mark, whatever. And yeah, we can just go ahead and we're just gonna add in a couple more fields here, and that's it. So let's go ahead and test this out. It actually looks like I'm encountering an error down here. I'm not sure, maybe my face is blocking this, but I just think that the data isn't being loaded in here properly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm going to test the workflow out, and we're just gonna add in some test data here. Like for example, this checkbox here. And so it's gonna load in the data and then it's gonna fire this off. Let's just wait until this is done. And now we can head over to the Google Sheets here, and effectively we are adding in this data down here. You can see that there's no name being added in here because it was pulling it in from a custom variable that didn't exist, but I hard-coded the last name and the email, so that added in there. So we can just take a look back here and see that, again, this was hard-coded in, but there was no actual data from this row, so it pulled in an empty field, but this was hard-coded in and it made the cut into Google Sheets. And so that's essentially adding things back into Google Sheets. Now let's talk about changing this so that we can update and add simultaneously. And this is where the append or update row comes into play, because with something like this, it's cool because they have the built-in functionality to not only add, but also update. But this comes with a host of problems, because the thing is this is really powerful functionality because all of a sudden you can add or update in one, but how do you know which row to update? If we circle back to this example, there's 700 rows. What we need to do is, first of all, find the right row to update. Let's say it's this one. We'd need to find this on a unique identifier. What I've used here is an ID string from the CRM, but the easiest way to get started with this is for using somebody's email. That's probably going to be the easiest way. So I'm just gonna change this email just because I want these two emails to be different so we can search it up effectively. And we're going to add one more step in here. Before I go ahead and I update or add, we need a search step in here in between these two steps so that we can effectively find the row, and if it exists, then we update it. But if it doesn't exist, then we just create it. So we're gonna hit this plus button in between these two, and we're gonna type in Google Sheets again. And we're gonna select the get rows down here, which is right there. So let's go ahead, let's do this. The only thing that we need to do is, again, add in the Google Sheet. This is a bit of a pain in the butt every single time because you're essentially just doing the same thing over and over and over again. We have this filter section here, and we can add in a filter. And what we're gonna need to do is search data based on a column. And the unique identifier here is likely going to be an email. This is probably the easiest because two people can have the same first name, two people can have the same last name, two people can have the same email, budget, rejected type of lead, cost of goods sold, and profit and approved, but no two people in the world are going to have the same email. No two people in the world are going to have the same phone number. Phone numbers are harder because they can be formatted in a million different ways, and no two people should have the same ID in your CRM, right? So email and IDs are probably the best, and what we can do is we can search up based on the ID. And I'm just gonna pull in that ID from the Google Sheet here, and that is located in column C or column 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull in column 3 here. And this is column 3 right here. When it comes to lists, it starts at 0. This is just coding, but you can just count it up. 1, 2, and 3. This confused me when I first started programming, so I just thought I'd point that out. So we'll go ahead and search up based on this, and let's give this a shot. I'm first going to unlink these and then test this step out, and we're going to effectively just check the box off to run the scenario and see the results that we get. And it's not going to pull in anything because I didn't actually include an email here, right? So if we just go back and we try this one more time, effectively, I want to load it in with sample data here. So let's now go ahead, test this workflow out, and we're gonna check off the approve button, and now it should work and it should pull in the person's email on this search step here. If we look at the data, we can see that we found somebody with that particular email address. Now, obviously, this is a simplistic example because we're pulling in the data from Google Sheets and then we're updating the same data, but you can think about like the trigger is like your CRM or some other input, and then you're trying to find this person based on the email they have in the CRM. And so effectively that's that. We can connect these two modules or nodes back in together. And now what we can do is we can essentially allow ourselves to update or add. And how we make sure that we update, if we need to update, is based on this column to match on field here. And what this is saying is it's saying, how do we know if we want to update somebody? And very similarly, what we want to do is we want to pull in the particular email here, right? So this is going to be the email, and the email to match on is not going to be a hard-coded value here. It's going to be a variable. And this variable we're getting from the search step, right? So we're searching up somebody and we found them, and then we're effectively going to pass that in here. We're going to test this step out, and we should be able to pull this person in. Now we have gone ahead, updated or added, and searched. And the thing is like, you can probably see here that we didn't even need to have this step in at all, but I just wanted to kind of go over the functionality of searching things up in Google Sheets, because this is also really important. These are probably the three most important things to know, is how to find data, how to update data, and how to create or add new data. And so now effectively we can update this person. So let's say that we just hard coded in a value here where, you know, we wanted to change some data about them. We're going to say the message is test message. Now we can go ahead and test this workflow out. I'm actually going to pause this, and I just want to unapprove this first, and then we're going to test this out again, and we're going to approve it this time, and the data should, oh, it just caught the last instance of me doing this, so I just need to wait a couple of seconds here before testing, and because I updated it twice very quickly in a row. Now we're going to go back and approve the message again, and this time it should update, and in real time we're going to see that the message is going to switch from, hey, I'm interested in your services, to test message right here. So that's how you can add and update things, and that's how you can do even a two-step lookup function here as well, so that you can find people based on data and then update them as well if you wanted to do that. The next thing that I want to talk about here is how you can autocomplete cells in Google Sheets. So let's say that a lead comes through, okay? And this lead, you can take this, me as an example here. I'm coming through and we want to auto confirm what type of inquiry this is. Maybe this is like maybe this is a new lead, maybe this is customer service. We'll just use those two examples for now. So I'm going to do inquiry. I'm going to insert in here like a drop down, and we're going to have customer service, and then we're going to have sales. I'm just going to give these colors because it makes me happy to see all these colors in here. I don't know if you guys are the same way, but it just makes it like so much more aesthetically pleasing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just, again, hard code in a value here. I'm interested in your pricing and services. And realistically, what would happen here is somebody would go to your website and they'd fill out a quote form, and on this quote form there'd be a message box here, and then they'd be like, I'm interested in your pricing and services, and then this data would be passed in to this form here, right? And then when this data is passed into the form, then we can automatically update it. But we're just going to use this as an example here. But effectively, we can just circle back to our example, and we can use something like ChatGPT. So I'm going to do OpenAI here. I'm going to select OpenAI and create a message. We're going to message a model, and I'm just going to keep this really simple. If you guys haven't done so already, you will need to connect in your OpenAI account. You can go to platform.openai.com, and you can log in to your account or create an account if you haven't done so already. I'll go ahead and log into my account just so you guys can see how this works. And we'll go ahead, click continue here. From the platform page, all we want to do is go over to your API. We'll go to the dashboard here, and then we'll go to API keys, and you'll just create an API key and then paste that into effectively your account here. You'll create a new credential, add the API key in here, and you're good to go. The only other thing is you'll want to go into your billing page, which is going to your profile here. I'm not going to go there because it's just going to show my phone number. So, but you can just go into the billing and add $5 because you need to have some amount of money in here to make this work. So once you've gone ahead and done so, and if you don't want to do that, you can just skip over this step as well. We're just going to essentially add in a model and a message for it to deliver some action for us. So for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use GPT-4o Mini. I'm going to say, please classify this as either a customer service or sales inquiry. And I'm going to say message here is going to be in the Google Sheets message, which is this field here. And again, what I'm pulling in here is just this row or this column right here. So we're going to add this in, and effectively what we're going to do is just add in a couple more things here. We're going to add in another message. This message is going to be an assistant message. The assistant message is just saying to ChatGPT, it's the output. It's like, how do you want this message to be formatted? And I want this message to be formatted as either customer service or sales. So I'm going to add in two assistant messages here, and I'm just going to type in customer service. That's a valid response. And I'm going to type in sales as well for assistant, and then it knows. You can think of the difference between assistant and user as user is the input and assistant is the output. And then you have your system message down here, which is context, but this is good enough for now. Effectively, we're just going to use this to generate the response and to classify that. And then we're going to go back into Google Sheets and we're going to update the particular column, which is this inquiry field right here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to update row in Google Sheet. And yeah, essentially we're just going to, actually just to speed this up, I'm going to copy this module by hitting Command C and Command V for paste. I'm going to push this back in, and effectively I'm going to delete this module here. And what we can do now is we can just change the operation to update a row. We already have our document, our sheet, everything. The only thing that I want to do here is just change, for example, the approved or the last field here, which hasn't been loaded in. How we load it in is just refreshing the data because we effectively added this after this module was created. And so now we just need to add in the inquiry type. And this is going to be the data from ChatGPT, right? And so let's go ahead. I'm just going to delete all of this other data here. And we're going to give this a shot. First things first, we need to run this module just to test this out. And then we can come back in here and we should have the data from here and we can just map it out in this inquiry field right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the content, which is just the output of the message. And we can click save and we'll test this out. First things first, I want to make sure that this is not approved here. So we're going to uncheck that. We're going to run the scenario again, and we're going to fire it off. And in real time, it should update this. So let's take a look and see how this handles it in real time. Okay, sweet. And it looks like that we actually had an error here, and that is just because we forgot to use the match field here. It doesn't know which row to update. So we're just going to add in the email that we got on the trigger here, which is essentially pulling in the person's email right here. So let's go ahead and test this step out. And there we go. We can see now that it has gone ahead and added in sales here because it's categorized it properly. And that's how AI can automatically take existing data like the message and then change this to whatever it is that you want, right? So that's obviously pretty cool stuff. The next thing that I want to go over here is how you can effectively style Google Sheets. So you can see that it's just coming in as like blank or kind of like just generic styling here. But maybe I want to have this as checkboxes every time. Right now, it's just going to come in as false or false or false or whatever, or it's just going to come in empty. How we can change this is we can just add in particular checkboxes, and you can see that the default value is false here. I'm just going to delete this, and even though there's no value here, it's still containing that check box, and we can just drag this down for as long as you want. Same thing with this. I can just paste this into the cell below and then delete the value, and I can just drag this down. And now every single time a new value comes in, it's going to come in, right, at the next particular row, but it will still keep this formatting here. We can also have formatting for different cells. So for example, in column D, I can change this so that the, where is it? The format, maybe the text align is, maybe it's text bold. Maybe this one is going to be, let's say, aligned on the left, and so on and so forth. Maybe this is going to be italicized. We can change all this kind of stuff, and it's just going to persist for every single new thing that we add in here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to test this out, and we're going to just approve this. And it's just going to be blank, so it's going to add in some random new value on here just to kind of showcase the results. But we can take a look and see that the data does persist. And it might actually come in at this cell below here, just because we just added a value to row number 4. Let's take a look and see how this is coming along. So it looks like we ran into an issue here, and we can see that we did receive this error here. I think my face is just blocking it, but it says like problem with node. Essentially, it's just saying this column to match on field can't be empty. And right now we're not receiving anything. So how we can make sure that this works every single time is I'm gonna copy this, and we're going to enter in a function here. So I'm gonna hit these curly braces here, just typing it on my keyboard, and then I'm going to hit the pound sign, or the dollar sign, and I'm going to say if empty. And what if empty does is we just have a fallback value. If it doesn't exist, then we're going to place something else in. This takes 2 fields. The first one is going to be this JSON email field, and all we have to do is just essentially add this in here. We can also drag it over, so if I just delete this, we can just drag the email field in between here, and that's the first value, and then a comma to separate the 2 values, and then we'll have a fallback value like test@gmail.com. And we'll go ahead, save this, test this workflow one more time, and we're going to click approved here, and we'll see this fire off pretty shortly here. Sweet. So it's passed because of the fallback value, and it's also updated this, but we also ran into an error here, and it's the same kind of deal as before. I'm just gonna copy this email over, and we're gonna paste this in here. And this is also going to work as well with that fallback value. We can also see that essentially we added these people in here. And this is italicized, this is bolded, and if I selected true here, then it would effectively come in as true. So for example, I can come back in here and I can say the inquiry type is customer service and approved is true. And then we can go ahead and test this out. Let's see if the data persists here. Sweet. And now we have the data being here, right? With customer service, with the checkbox, which is really cool. So you can actually keep your styling in Google Sheets if you want to balance that blend between automation, but also really cool styling so it looks and feels like your own sheet, then that's an excellent option. The next thing that I want to talk about is actually doing inline Google Sheet functions here. And so I think this is pretty cool. So for example, Google Sheets has just so many different functions. I could do, for example, budget minus cost of goods sold equals profit here. And you can also just insert this exact particular function into n8n, and it can do it automatically for you. So let's go ahead. I'm actually just going to unlink both of these, and we're just going to update the sheet here. I'm going to paste this into the profit here. The problem is that we just need to do a couple things. First of all, we need to say it's equal to this, but we don't know if it's row 2 or if it's row 200, right? And so how we know this is by effectively a couple things. In this example here, we know it because of the row start, right? And so we can paste in that row start here, and then it's going to be like H2 here. This is the equivalent of 2 or 3 or whatever because it's pulling in the row number here. We can also do this as well, right? So it's going to be E, whatever row number it is, minus H, whatever row number it is. And so that's one way of doing it. But the other issue is like, let's say that you're trying to do this and you don't do this, you will need to do the search step first. You'll need to figure out, okay, what row is this on before you can do inline functions. So that's effectively that. Let's go ahead and test this out by hitting the test button here and then clicking approved. First things first is I'm actually going to pause this just because I do need to change the profit here. And we're going to run this again. Okay, so I've hit approved, and circling back in here, we're going to add in that function in real time, and we can see that it added it in as E2 equal minus H2. And that's just simply because I forgot to put in the equal sign here. So if we go back here and I put in the equal sign again, let's give this a shot. So I'm gonna just make sure that I delete this and I uncheck it, and we can give it another go. Okay, so we're gonna test the scenario, and I'm going to approve this, and let's see this fire off one more time. Let's go back in to see the real time data come in, and there we go, it's 700 now. So that's how you can do inline functions in something like Google Sheets. So let's go ahead and swap this up. I'm going to test out another feature here, and this feature is dealing when you have like multiple different people that you want to test at the same time. So let's say that you're not just dealing with one person at a time, but you have like 500, 600. Let's say you're web scraping data and you have like 1,000 people that you want to add into Google Sheets at the same time. That is a lot of data to be dealing with. And so let's talk about how we can effectively, deal with that much data. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new scenario up top here. And we're going to, this time, just create mock data. So I'm going to come into the, I'm just going to click a manual trigger for now, come into the, data transformation section here, and I'm just going to edit fields. Essentially what I'm doing here is I just want to create mock data, right? And you can go into Google, you can go into ChatGPT and just ask for this to do it, right? Hey, can you please create me a JSON file of 3 new leads as mock data? It's going to take that request, and we're going to be able to create this data very, very quickly. Awesome. So here's our mock data coming in. Just going to take a couple seconds here to load. And then effectively we're good to go. We'll copy this in and we'll circle back, and I'm just going to change the mode to JSON here, and we can delete everything here and paste this in. And it doesn't look like it actually copied properly. So I'm going to come back here and just copy it all in one more time. Sweet. So we have our data. Everything's good. We'll test this out and we'll see that we have results on the right side here. We have 3 results: John Doe, Jane Smith, Michael Johnson. And we want to add all 3 of these people one by one into this Google Sheet here. And we'll do like first name, last name, email. And let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we need to do is we need to add in an iterator or a split out function. Now what a split out does is you're taking something that is a list. This is a list called leads, and we're going to go through it one by one. We're going to start with John Doe, we're going to go to Jane Smith, and then we're going to go to Michael Johnson afterwards. So just to simplify this a bit more, circling back to the blackboard here, think about like a grocery list, okay? You go to the store and you buy apples, bananas, and mangoes. Right? You're going in, you know exactly which things. The first thing that you do when you go to the store is you're gonna buy the first thing on your list, and then you can cross that off. And then only once you actually find those apples, you're like, okay, I've done the first task. Then I'm gonna go to bananas and cross that off my list, and then that's done. And then mangoes. And very similarly using n8n, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go through the first person, and then add them to the sheet, then add the second person, then add the third person. And more or less, this is exactly how this split out function works, is we're going through them one at a time. So we can test the results here. Oops, and it's just drawing an error. Effectively, let's just delete this, test the workflow so we have some mock data. We're gonna now connect this back in that we have the mock data here, and we're going to pass in leads. The reason we're passing in leads is because this is the list. The list has this square bracket here. Now, when we test this step, we're gonna go through them one by one. First, we're gonna do John, then we're gonna do Jane, then we're gonna do Michael. And we can simply just add them into Google Sheets. So we're gonna search by Google Sheets here, and we're going to append row in spreadsheet. And very similarly, just like before, we're going to choose the right spreadsheet and we're going to choose the right tab. This time it's going to be sheet 2 because we're using sheet 2 down here. And more or less, we're just going to map in the person's name. So I'm going to circle back to schema here, and I want to add in, I'm just going to say name, and I'm going to add in email here. And let's just forget that the last name is in there just because I thought that they were going to be split, but they're not, and we can test this out. Okay, and we're going to see the results come in real time. This is a bit fast, and so effectively what's going on here is we have this list, and it's going through 3 items. So we have one list that contains 3 people, then we're breaking that into 3 people, going through it one by one by one, and then we add them to the Google Sheet. And so that's how you can add in tons of data. But just following up with this, a lot of the times you're gonna have errors doing this because maybe you want to load in like 1,000 people at the same time. Maybe you're like backlogging 10 years of company data into Google Sheets. And the problem is if you type in Google Sheets rate limiting, you'll quickly find out that you're gonna have something called rate limiting happening to you. This is common with every single software application out there pretty much in the world. And what they say is you can only send a certain amount of requests in a given time interval. With Google Sheets, you can only send 300 requests in 1 minute. And if you send more than that, then they're gonna lock you out and you can't send data over to Google Sheets again for a certain amount of time. The problem is that this fires off really fast. You saw it like literally happen instantly with 3, and you could go through 300 almost just as fast. And so how we can avoid that rate limiting from happening is we're gonna add in a plus button here, and we're gonna put a wait step. We can add this wait step to 1 second, which means that in a minute, it's only gonna allow 60 entries into it, which means that we're not gonna be hitting this 300 limit in 1 minute. We're only gonna hit 60. And so now if we test this again, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna delete this data, and we're gonna give this a shot again. We'll test it out, and we'll see the first result is being processed, right? And then the second result and the third result. And there we have it, right? I can even just do it one more time just because I really wanna show you guys what this actually looks like. So in real time, we're gonna have the first result come through here. Okay, I take that back. Apparently they're all processed at the same time. But yeah, anyways, in reality, it's going through them one by one by one. And so I wanna share just one last thing in this video, and that is if or else statements, because I think this is really powerful stuff. So just like functions, how we can have inline functions here, we can actually have conditional logic here, right? And so let's say that this person, we're trying to see if they're rejected or not. And let's just see something that might be like, that we might want to reject them based off of. And we can say status is, we could just do like, I don't know, we'll just change this to budget. And we're going to have this be a number here. And this is going to be 100, and we're going to change this budget to 1,000, and then we're going to change this budget to 10,000. And so different people, different budgets. And maybe we only want to reject people that have a budget that is $1,000 or less than $1,000. So less than $1,000. So we'll come into this Google Sheets module here. Okay. And effectively, first things first, we're going to fetch in the old data or the new data that we just created. And in this rejected field here, we're going to add in an expression. Remember, an expression is custom code or variables that we can pull in from the side. It's not just hard-coded text. I'm going to hit in curly brace, curly brace. This is just normal like syntax or boilerplate stuff for n8n, $, and we're going to do an if statement. And what an if statement does, and I'm actually just going to circle back to the blackboard here because I think this is just a bit easier to explain, is an if statement checks a condition. It will check a particular condition. And this condition is whatever it is that you set. So for example, a condition could be, does 1 equal 1? Or another condition could be, does 1 equal 2? Or another condition is, is budget over $1,000? And so this is the condition that we want to check for here, right? So is their budget over $1,000? And if it's true, then it'll go down path A. But if it's false, it's going to go down path B. So if the budget is over $1,000, then it's going to go down path A, and it's going to say rejected is false because we want to talk to this person. But if the budget is less than $1,000, right, then effectively what's going on here is we're going to say it's true. They're rejected. We don't want to talk to them. Maybe we just can't make it work. And so we need to program that into our particular n8n environment. How we do that is this takes 3 conditions. The first one is the condition. So we're going to take a look and see in this particular schema if the, and we have to run the data again here just because it's not actually being loaded in. So I'm just going to delete this and we're going to test the data here because we added in budget in here. We're going to link this back up, and now we have access to the budget here. And so we're going to take a look and see, is this budget, okay, is that going to be greater than or equal to $1,000? And if it is, then it's going to be false. If it's not, then it's true. And we can just add this as text strings in here. This is like just defining the data type, and anything in these quotations here is essentially text. And so that's how we can simply understand whether somebody's rejected or not. So let's go ahead, let's test this out one more time, and we'll see the data come in here. False, false, true. We can do this one more time, and then we can also insert in those particular checkboxes here as well. And let's try this one more time. So data will come through, be populated in this Google Sheet, and it's going to determine whether they're checked off or not. The reason, again, that it didn't come in here as opposed to the top is because this already had a value of false, so we just need to delete that and then push this down, and we'll try this one more time while these values do not have anything in them. I just deleted it. And now we can see that these guys, this guy was rejected and these 2 people passed. So these are people that maybe we want to call, and so on and so forth. And essentially that is 10 awesome, amazing ways that you can automate Google Sheets through n8n. This is just like to get you started, but there's 1,000,001 other things that you can do with this. And I just wanted to add on, actually, just one last thing here, is that you don't just have to do like if statements, you could also have if empty statements, right? So if empty, right? If something is not here, then we have a fallback value, which is no name, for example. And so what's going to happen is it's going to search, does their name exist? And if it does, paste the name in. If it doesn't, then paste in no name. So I'm just changing Jane Doe's name here to nothing. We're going to test this out, and it's going to circle back and update this Google Sheet. And this said here, no name, right? So there's kind of the value, or you put in their name. And that's how if empty statements work. You place a fallback value if the main value doesn't exist. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that you found value in it. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And if you guys are new to this channel and you want to maximize the, if you want to maximize your learning curve in AI automation and AI agents, then I highly recommend taking a look at my school. Community was just launched, I don't know, like just over a week ago here. We already have 181 members, and it's a place where you can learn everything about automation. This stuff's really hard to learn, and it took me years, and I hit every single bump along the road. And yeah, you can just jump on live calls, throw in tech support issues, and the community will get back to you and help solve these issues together so that you don't have to spend 12 hours like I did stumbling through an error only to figure out you can't solve it at the end of the day. So thanks guys for watching. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.